All right, so we just saw how to do this. Now I'm going to do the same thing, but not against this beautiful background. I'm going to do this against a plain white background. So I need to do that so that essentially, hold on, let me store this quick so we can get back to that, right? So I'm going to store animation to disk. And there it is. And what I'd like to do is render it in this way, just against a white background. Hold on, let me turn off the brush. We don't need that preview anymore on the brush. So we now have the same path, exactly the same path, but we want to eventually also add some blurring that we call mystic vision or dark vision that will make it look like it's got a little bit of a shadow trail there, right? And in fact, I have a even longer version of it. And so in order to do that, we keep this animation, right? The brush keyframer still has the path, right? But what we will do is we'll render it against a plain white background. No need to delete or anything. We'll just clear the content of the animation. Right here, go to the animation menu and say clear. Right, clearing the frames will make sure that there is nothing. They're all white, or whatever the background color is. You'll see the secondary color here is currently white. Right, and if you want to do that on green or blue screen or something like that, be my guest. You can do that. Here we'll erase to white. And as we scrub through that, our airplane is going through the exact same path. It is small and dipping down. It gets bigger. And then eventually you see the angle is getting it ready for splashdown. And it is a little bit closer to the camera. So we'll render into that white background. Right. So right here. And that's, of course, one that we also want to store. So let's make a habit of storing these important files. And so now we have this one here is the older version of it. I'm going to delete that. So here it is. Now what I want to do is get to something that looks more like this. Let me resize this a little bit so we have a better look at it. We want to get that motion, not the motion blur, more like a zoom blur, but we want it to track where the sun is and therefore where the blur is coming from, right? And then later we'll composite it back into the animation where we didn't have the airplane yet. All right, so in order to get this effect, I'll need the original airplane. It's still in there. It's in the animation. And I'm not going to need the brush keyframer for that. I'm going to hold on to that, though, just in case I want to keep the exact same path and render something with it. So let's not delete that quite yet. But we want to essentially get it to the point where we can even see more of that mystic vision. Something like this here. This is a little bit too strong, but we can always undo. We can always fade it a little bit if we want it, right? But we want this length, this how far it's reaching for that cast shadow. So in order to get to that point, to that level, we are going to use the timeline. There is an option here on the timeline, right here below my marker is called timeline, right? And when you click on that, you'll get to this, and I'm already in it, but I'm gonna actually close this and click it so you'll see the way it happens to you the first time, and you'll select the blur option. In the group of blurring tools, there is a dark vision. Zoom blur might also do. Haven't tried that too much. No, that won't do because it's taking the white ones too. It's blurring the white ones too. So it's not going to be the same effect. What we want to do is really the dark vision. Yeah, and with the dark vision, wherever the sun is that's where you want to position it. So initially, the sun is somewhere here, and you would keyframe that. And then towards the end of the animation, the sun is somewhere on the left side, and you'd be over there. And you'd also want to spread it a little bit stronger. So it'd be something like this, but we can do better. Um, First of all, we want to see where the sun really is. We don't want to do it an approximation. So while we prepare the location of the keyframes, it's perfectly fine to have that animation back in there. Click on that stored animation. That's one of the great things about it. Once it's stored, you can easily restore it. And then here, the preview will actually show it to you. All right. So let's make sure it's also a linear transition here. And now those keyframes, we may need to adjust them. let's get the first keyframe or delete them all and start from scratch. So at the very beginning, we will need the sun around here, right? That's the center point for that blur, and we can give it the maximum, the quality, and no, don't worry about it affecting here in the preview, affecting the background. Eventually, we'll replace this with the actual plane animation on white background, and the only thing that we will see is the airplane casting a shadow, right? And so what we'll do is we'll store this here, keyframe this, and then we'll go to the very end, and there is a sun appearing over here now. Keyframe that, and we can double check if or somewhere in between, if it's doing the right thing. We can certainly track it here, click it if we need to. So we have a couple of key locations that are properly indicating the position of the sun. And that is basically the position or the hotspot from which that dark vision blur is emanating, right? So we don't really need those. This is more just to show that there's a whole lot of things you can do with this tool in terms of keyframe location, and you could switch them around and stuff like that. All right, I'm gonna go, in fact, delete this one and delete this, grab this one and kill it. So I have just 3 keyframes, and I'm about to render, but I don't want to render against this background. So I'm gonna go get my airplane back, this one here. And now as I scrub through that, you can see the only thing that's getting that blur is the black part, the airplane, or the dark part. It's not necessarily exactly black, but the dark parts are the one that are being taken over by this filter called dark vision. Now I'm going to render that. Make sure you have the save undo checked here so you can undo if you need to. But while I wait for this, I'll say, well, it's nice, but it would be nice if it were even longer. Right? Well, just render it again. Don't touch anything, just click apply again. Now, you may change your mind and say, oh no, I wish I had kept a copy of the prior. So hit undo, and you're back to square one. Let me see if I can do that here on this crowded screen. So you have the first render, right? Let's go store that animation, store to disk. And there it is. Now let's see number 2, right? A second render pass. There you go. Now you can see the shadow is significantly longer because it's accumulating to what's already there. And then we can do that again. And you can render this 3-4 times until you say, okay, that's long enough. And then at that point, it'll store that. And you have your animation of just the airplane against white background with a very long cast shadow. Let's go take a quick look here and scrub through that. All right, and so that's what we will composite together with the original animation that we have here. All right, now there's a couple of ways to do that. Let's talk about that in the next section.